What's up, good people? It's your boy Leroy McKenzie Jr. coming to you with the Author Showcase brought to you by the National Black Unity News newspaper. Can y'all see that? The National Black Community News newspaper and J&F Enterprises, where we bring you some of the world's, I can actually say that, the world's prolific writers, authors, those who are touching the world with their words. And um, we try to bring you authors that have a message, that have a mission, that have that will motivate you, and then have a purpose to what it is that they're doing, what they do. As I mentioned, they touch you with your word, with their words. And this show none will be just like all of the others, where we want to enlighten, empower, and impact you, which is where we want to teach you something. We want to equip you with something, but then also at the end of the day, impact you to want to do something. So if that means picking up, get you, motivate you to impact you to pick up a book, that's what we want to do because we want you to read more. We need to actually read more. So today I am blessed to have with me um, a author who we will have him kind of introduce himself, and then we'll get into our conversation about his book, about his books, and all of those things that have to do with him becoming a writer, his writing journey, and what that looks like, so that you can be inspired, so that you can actually say, "Wow, um, he has a book. Let me one read his book, but then what can I learn if I'm an aspiring writer? What can I learn from him to make me a successful writer as well?" So I want to welcome and to introduce to everyone Mr. Dale Porter, who I'm going to let him. We start the conversation off by letting the authors kind of introduce themselves. So how are you today, Mr. Porter?
I am fine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. It's a great, nice, crisp day here in Maryland. So I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I can't complain at all. So I usually like to start off our conversations by having the authors kind of introduce themselves and tell the audience, the viewing audience, a little bit about who they are. So can you tell the audience just a little bit about who Mr. Dale Porter is,
Sure.
where he's from, and all those
Be
things?
happy to. First of all, my name is Dale Porter, but my pen name is D.L. Lance. That's the name that's authored, well, not just this book, but the other two that I've written, which I guess we'll talk about a little later on.
Uh huh.
But I was born actually in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York, and a place that a lot of you have heard of, Bedford Stuyvesant. I grew up there. I actually spent most of my life there. I went to New York University, graduated from there, and ultimately I became an air traffic controller.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I am a retired air traffic controller. I'm actually a late bloomer when it comes to writing.
Hmm.
I guess we'll talk about how I got into that in a little bit
Right.
too. Uh, but I am married. I've been married for a long, long time. I think this year, I don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to get these things wrong. This is 2021, right? So this is
Yes, sir.
48 years that I have been
That's
married.
awesome. That's awesome. I
We
love it.
spent most of our lives in New York. We moved to Maryland in 2013, and we love it here. It's great. You know, uh, we're thrilled to be here. It's a little warmer down here than it is in New York most of the time, which is helpful on my old knees, on my old joints in my body. Appreciates a little bit of warm weather, and that's me. I mean, as I said, I've written actually three books at this point,
Okay.
but the one that we're focusing on right now is called Veiled Vigilance, and it's actually about an air traffic controller. And I don't know how much more you really care about what happened with me, but as I said, I'm an inner city kid from New York, and the book is written from that perspective.
Absolutely. All right. Now, and I did a little research on you before you came in, and I did see that you were, of course, I kind of figured you were a native New Yorker because it looks like you're a Yankees fan, a Knicks fan, Giants fan. So I'll try not from being from Baltimore, being an Orioles fan, forever an Orioles fan, and a Ravens fan. I'll try not to hold that against you in
Well,
the
no,
conversation.
there are teams that we don't like, but none of them are in Baltimore. I'm fine with the Baltimore teams, even though I'm a New Yorker at heart. You're right, Yankees, Knicks. We have to sort of hang our head when we say Knicks, but we still say it. Knicks, Giants. Uh, but listen, Baltimore folks are fine. There are those teams we really don't like. None of them, however, are in Baltimore. So
All right. I gotta ask you this. Now, you a Knicks fan. I don't know how much you are into basketball. What do you think about the Nets
you
and them?
know,
Are you a Brooklyn Nets fan?
no, okay. So it is impossible to change allegiances like that. When you've been a Knicks fan your entire life, and suddenly these
Mm,
guys show up in Brooklyn.
yeah, that's true.
Just listen. I think they might win the NBA championship as with as much talent as they have, but
Mm.
they're never going to convert me. I'm a fan, and that's not necessarily an encouraging thing to say, but I am. I guess it's the price you have to pay for being a Yankee fan, is you got to
Now,
be a
but
fan too. So
that's one thing I will say that the New York fan. If you're a Knicks fan, you're a Knicks fan forever. If you're a
yeah, you're
Yankees
right.
fan, you're a Yankees fan forever.
How much it hurts, I'm a Knicks fan. You're right.
That is so true, and that's great. That is awesome. But I noticed that, and I thought I would toss that in there, and we could have a nice little conversation about about that. So tell me what I want to start by asking you what got you started writing. You said you were a late bloomer in writing. What was that thing that kind of triggered you saying, "Wow, I think I want to write a book and put something out there."
It's an interesting question because I sort of considered myself an athlete. I played baseball and basketball in college,
Okay.
and just continued playing amateur sports uh, throughout my life. And I wound up tearing my rotator cuff, and I
Mm,
think it was 2006. And I had the surgery, and it's a very restrictive surgery. You really can't do anything for like
mm,
3 months. So I decided I would do some reading, and I did. I read some John Gresham, some Dan Brown, things like that. And because of the job that I had, I was facing mandatory retirement. As an air traffic controller, you can't work past a certain age. Uh,
really? Oh wow. Okay.
and I knew that was coming, so I said, well, I have to do something here, and I can't sing or dance. So after I read those books, I said, well, I think I could do this. So I did a little research, actually, on John Gresham, because he was a lawyer originally. He wasn't a writer. And so I sort of followed his lead. That I wrote a chapter. I had an idea in mind. I wrote a chapter, and I give it to my wife to read. She's pretty objective. She's not going to sugarcoat it for me. So I asked
Mm.
her, I said, what do you think of this? And her response was, well, where's the rest of it? I got to see what happens to these people. So that's how I actually got into writing. And that's not actually the book we're here to talk about today. That was my first book, which has yet to be published. Books 2 and 3 have been published. But I was talking to a publisher who I'm no longer affiliated with, and they said they felt that this would be the one to publish first because it was so topical. When you're talking about air traffic and you're talking about terrorism, which is what this book is about, it sort of rings true to a lot of people given what happened on 9/11.
Mhm.
So that's how I got started. I started writing because I couldn't do anything else for 12 weeks, and it just
Okay.
blocked.
Okay. Oh wow. And that's interesting. Now, and we'll get into the writing aspect of that a little later. But I do want to piggyback off of what was it that made you want to write the Veiled Vigilance? What was it about that made you want to write that particular book?
Well, the job that I had, that I'm retired from, air traffic controller, has always fascinated people. When I tell folks, "Oh, I'm an air traffic controller," they say, "Ooh, tell us about it." So I know that people were curious about the job itself. And
Hmm.
after 9/11 happened, and 9/11 incidentally happened in my airspace,
Okay.
airspace that because I worked in the New York metropolitan area, So it was in my airspace. And, there was so much talk about how to prevent terrorism. And I realized as an insider within the system, I had access to a lot of information and a lot of things that could potentially compromise the entire system.
Wow.
And I said, this would make a really good story. And so I started formulating them in my mind. And that's how I came up with this idea. So it really is about an air traffic controller who inadvertently gets himself involved with an international terrorist cell, and how he has to sort of how he has to work to try to overcome what's going on. I don't
Mhm.
want to give too much of it away. But,
No, absolutely, absolutely. But we, yeah, because I was going to ask you, that was going to be my next question, to give an overview of what the story is, what the story is about, and it's interesting that you took I guess a character and developed it around something that you knew a lot about, which I think is really cool, because how much better to write a novel than about an interesting, because I'm sure you have some very interesting stories to tell from that dynamic. Like you said, you knew some things that a lot of folks don't know, and
yeah,
especially when it comes to what happened on 9/11 and everything like that too, and how that played into it.
and there's some technical information in the book that people probably would find interesting in terms of how air traffic works, but it's really not
Okay.
necessarily about that. It's just interspersed casually throughout the book. The book is
Hmm.
really about this poor guy who gets sort of snookered into this terrorist activity and how he's going to now try to thwart what's going on with all of that.
Hmm. Now, did you have a kind of a method to how you developed your characters in your book as a writer? Was there a certain way or a certain method that you kind of used?
Well, so to some degree, yes. When you look at stories or movies, and I wrote all three of the books that I've written with an eye towards them being made into movies. In fact, as we speak, I just closed up some software that's helping me write screenplays for these books, uh, so that they could possibly be turned into movies. Uh, but first of all, I used characteristics of people that I knew to create
Okay.
characters.
Hmm.
That's the first thing. And then secondly, when you watch a movie, it's interesting. Some of the greatest movies ever made, you pick The Godfather or The Deer Hunter or these kinds of movies. What you realize is you have to figure out a way to introduce the characters.
Right.
And
Right.
things like weddings and funerals, or some sort of big gathering helps you to introduce all of your main characters and really sort of develop them fairly quickly. And so
Hmm.
that's what I did in the first book I wrote. I used a funeral. In this book, I did it a little differently in that I developed the characters as they went along. But I absolutely used characteristics from people that I knew. As I described, some of the characters who worked with the main character in the book, they're actually I'm actually describing people I worked with, and
Hmm.
it's a pretty interesting and funny bunch of guys. So I'm using them as my characters. They don't know it, but I am.
Now, let me ask you this: with you saying that you used some sensitive information in the book and everything, did you have to get a like approval or anything like that through the I guess through the air traffic control, the
So
government? Everything?
it's not sensitive enough so that anybody could do anything with it. It's just
Okay,
sort of an interesting look behind the curtain at what goes on at an air traffic facility. I happen to work in a radar facility. It's called an approach control.
okay,
It gives you an insight, and it happens to be the busiest facility in the world. It,
wow,
one in every six planes that takes off from anywhere in the world passes through that airspace.
really,
So,
okay.
so it gives you sort of an inside look at what goes on at a busy radar facility. It's not really exposing sensitive information per se, even
Hmm.
though I make sort of veiled reference to it. Uh, it's not enough for someone to take and run with it and say, "Oh, I could do something detrimental to the system. Yeah, I would. That would probably get me arrested if I did that.
It makes me think about just I think it was a couple of books of the author like presidents and a couple of people that have written books about being in certain offices in government. Especially when you talk about being like all these folks that have these books that were in the administration of whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's George Bush, any of them, they have to get approval of their particular books. They have to have somebody to make sure it's in compliance and everything like that they aren't divulging any type of information that could be deemed, that could be
Yeah,
used, you said, and everything like that. So
yeah.
I was just wondering about that. Now, you mentioned that you've written several, total of 3 books. Now, is there a particular genre that you kind of have with each of your books, or are you kind of
I guess I'm a bit of
figuring things
uh,
genres?
a conspiracy theorist, I guess, because that seems to be. I didn't think about it when I was doing it, but it seems like they all have this
Mm,
sort of thread of conspiracy going through them. The first one, which I said isn't published yet, is called "The Silence Was Golden," and it really goes back and talks about the groups that existed, like the Black Panthers and the Young Lords. And the Young Lords were essentially the Hispanic version of the Black Panthers back in the late '60s and early '70s. And because that's when I was going to school, I knew a lot of these people.
mhm,
My wife and I grew up with a lot of these people, and so that has to do with that group and how they, as the years progressed, 20 years later, where they were at and how it impacted this couple that knew them but wasn't really a part of them. So it's really sort of has to do with conspiracy to some degree. And of course, the last one, which I just put out on Amazon a couple of months ago, uh, has is it's amazing how it's very topical right now because it has to do with the conspiracy surrounding a tainted flu vaccine.
mm. Oh,
That sounds
wow.
familiar. Now,
Yeah.
I wrote that long before what's happening now is happening, but that's called the Senescence Project. Uh,
Mm.
and if you went on Amazon and looked up DL Lance, it probably would pop up. Uh, I actually like that one better than all of the ones I've written. Although Veiled Vigilance seems a lot of other people like that one. So uh, I'm
Oh, yeah,
good.
that sounds really
I'm
interesting.
screenplays right now, and hopefully, I got it in a couple of people's hands, and hopefully, I can get it in someone's hands who wants to turn it into a movie, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's certain, I know that there's certain types of books that I've read, and I'll ask you what your take is on that. What makes a good book to be able to be turned into a movie? And I'll give you an example, current example, and I don't know if you've watched it yet, but it's called One Night in Miami. That was directed by Regina King. It's based off of the play, I believe it was, which I think came from a book. I'm not sure, whatever. But what do you think makes a good book that can be turned into a movie?
Well, so I think that you need a good story first of all. Got to be a
Mm-hmm.
good storyteller. Unless now, One Night in Miami, and I haven't seen it yet, but it appears that it's based, however loosely, on the Liston Ali fight that took place in Miami. Uh, and so that's to some degree uh, autobiographical or it's a documentary to some extent. It might be a docudrama. But if you're just
Yeah.
writing a novel, which is what I've done, first you got to have a good story. So now, fortunately, I have a distorted mind, so coming up with a good story is not that difficult. Um, I can come up with some really outlandish stories. The problem becomes you have to tie it all together. You have to make it all fit. So the first thing is you need a good story. Then to me, you have to have an entertaining way of presenting it or writing it.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing has to be something that makes it enjoyable. If you make it too heavy, then it wears folks out and they don't want to continue with the story. If you make it too light, then they lose the impact of the story. So you have to have a style of writing, I think, that people will want to read, that will draw them in, that will hold on to them, that will make them say, "Oh, I got to go. I wish I could finish the rest of this, get back to it." And then the third aspect I would say is you need an opportunity. It's very
Mm.
difficult out here today. Uh, I would imagine it's always been difficult to be successful as a novelist, but it's even more difficult today because, as you said earlier, people don't read
Yeah, yeah,
anymore. In particular, our people don't read
right,
anymore.
right.
And so when I was writing them, I wrote them with a movie in mind. I'm a big movie buff. There was a time when I had over 500 movies here in my house, and
Wow.
I love the older movies. I love the movies from the 40s and the 50s. I love that stuff, but I love some of the new stuff too. Uh, and so I wrote them with an eye towards them being made into a movie.
Hmm.
Uh, Now, that's not. I don't think that's the way that novelists really write. But nobody told me I couldn't do that, so that's what I did. And it seems to be, as I'm writing the screenplay. Screenplays are obviously different from a novel, but it's making it a little easier to translate from novel form into screenplay. So that's what I think. I think you need a good story. I think you have to have an engaging style of writing, and I think you need an opportunity
Yeah.
to present your stuff. A lot of times, these folks who have successful things. I was watching the news the other night, and Don Lemon has a book. I shouldn't be
Yeah.
I shouldn't be here promoting Don Lemon's book, but he has a book out, and it's going to be successful. And one of the reasons is that he has a platform.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
on the news every night,
Right.
and he spent, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes the other night talking about his book.
Hmm.
Well, how many millions of people did he reach by doing that?
Just by doing that. Right.
Right. So
Right.
that's the problem that many of us novelists or writers in general face, is how do you
Hmm.
get a platform to reach enough people so that your book is successful?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why that was one of the reasons when Brother David Murphy and I had the conversation about doing the author showcase in the National Black Unity News. That was exactly the purpose because we wanted to give Black authors a platform where they would be able to be highlighted, like you said, to be able to get the exposure that we would not normally get.
Right.
So that was a big thing. Well, that was the major thing for us, and I'm grateful for him to having the idea of wanting to do that and saying that, hey, this is something that our community needs. This is something that will give authors, give Black authors the ability to be able to talk about their their mission, their message, their motivation, their movement, all are surrounded by the books that they write. Because there's some phenomenal writers that we've had to be that are out here. Period. Black writers that are out here. Period. But you sometimes you don't know them because they aren't given that platform.
Yes.
So this is what we enjoy being able to do. Like I tell all of the authors that have been a part of the showcase, I love being able to have these conversations with you all because I learn so much from you all. Just the stories that you all have, the creativity that you all have, and all of those things. So, so I appreciate that, and you're so right. Now, let me ask you this: do you have a message that you want the reader to come away with from each of your books? Is there a common theme, or is there just an individual theme message that you want them to come away with?
I have an expression uh, that says conspiracies abound at every turn. Uh, but my writing is by and large for entertainment purposes.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do have so I, in essence, tried to create a new genre, one that doesn't exist.
Ah.
I mean, I have to make up a name for it, but essentially, it's adult writing
Mm-hmm.
without any explicit sexual content and without any profanity.
Mm-hmm.
So my books are all written that way. So what happens is, you could read them, and you could have your teenagers read them. I don't think anyone younger than a teenager could read them because they are written on an adult level, and
Hmm.
conceptually, someone younger than a teenager wouldn't know what was going on.
Right,
But
right.
you don't have to worry about, well, what sort of explicit content is in these books.
Hmm.
They are adult reading, but without any of that explicit content.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I'm hoping that there's a market for that kind of thing.
No,
But the
no.
stories themselves are absolutely adult stories.
Mhm. And I think that that's major, like you said, because they in a lot of the genres, and writers in general sometimes think that they have to write a certain way to appeal to people. But I always believe, like you said, you can write a good story without having to have a lot without having a lot of cursing in it. You can write a great story without having a lot of sexual content in it and everything like that, and it be a good story. And that's truly being a good writer, because when you have people that enjoy that type of reading, but you still you keep them engaged. You're able to still keep them engaged, and they want to know, like your wife said, I want to find out what happens to these people. I want to know what's going on.
And I'm not knocking anybody else's
Absolutely.
style of writing. I
Right.
just think that there may be a niche
Right.
for this kind of writing, this style of writing, and
Absolutely.
I guess we're
Absolutely.
gonna find out. So,
Now, let me ask you this. Now, when I say, or what does I ask it this way? What does the veiled vigilance mean to you? When I say that, what does it mean to you?
um, that's an interesting question. What does it mean to me? Uh, I think that it's sort of, when I wrote the very first book, I wondered if that wasn't a fluke, maybe, and just I had this one idea. And I remember when I wrote it, I said, "All right, I'm not writing anything else unless someone pays me to write it." Uh, but what I realized is I have a bunch of ideas running around in my head.
Okay.
I actually have an idea for another book, which I am insistent that I'm not going to write until I do something with these three. So what it means to me is that personally, I can actually write these stories. I found that I'm a pretty good storyteller.
Hmm.
Uh, and to me, that the story to me is everything.
Right.
And I'm finding that I'm a pretty good storyteller. Uh, I know that I've sat down with my kids at times when they were little, and I tell them stories, and they'd be fascinated by them. So I finally realized, oh, you tell a pretty good story. So just figure out a good way to tell it, bring it all together, and you'll have yourself a good novel. And so that's really what it means to me. And it's nice that people seem to like it. Now, of course, many of those people are people I know, and the folks that you know are going to say nice things about you. But I do believe that if I could somehow get it into the hands of the general public, uh,
Hmm.
that a good deal of them would appreciate it.
Now, I want you to, if you can, and you touched on it a little bit, but for those aspiring authors, and even those that may have been seasoned, but they're trying to find out what the ingredients is. And you touched on, we talked from a movie perspective, what makes a good movie. And you dabbled a little bit, but I'd like for you to just talk about what are three keys to writing a good novel. What's going to make you? What's going to make Mr. Porter pick up a book and say, I enjoy, and after you've read that last page, you've been like, wow, I really enjoyed that. That
Well,
kept me.
okay, for me personally, I like I like a story. First of all of my books are about everyday people
Mm,
who are faced with extraordinary circumstances,
okay.
how they deal with them. So I like that a lot better than science fiction, uh,
Mm,
that kind of thing. And I know that science fiction is huge
Mhm.
or horror. I prefer stories that are about everyday people because I can relate to this guy. I can relate to some
Mhm.
poor guy who's going to work every day and life is going along as it goes along. And then all of a sudden, something extraordinary happens in his life. And somehow he's got to figure out a way out of this or what he's going to do
Wow.
about this or how it's going to change him. And
Mhm.
so those are the stories that I like. And then I like it if it has a little twist at the end.
Mhm.
Uh, you sort of see how he got himself out of this. You think you got it figured out. You see what's going on, and all of a sudden at the end, it bang! It slaps you in the head and says, "Ah, you didn't see this coming, did you?" So and that's sort of how I tried to write my books, so that that kind of thing would happen. I know that there are many people who read Veiled Vigilance and they said, I thought I had it figured out, and then you got me at the end there. That always makes me feel good when that happens because that's my goal.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Because I've had a couple of books that to me, and I had one of my clients, but he's also a friend, and he initially he had asked me to read his book over. So I'm like, cool, and read the book and was reading the book and was, I mean, it's a suspense thriller book, which a lot of us, you don't have a lot of black authors that write suspense thrillers. I mean, the book is engaging and everything, and here I am, I'm reading it, and I'm thinking about where the story's going, and how he's gonna end it, and I'm reading, and I'm like, he totally caught me off guard. I literally called him up, dude, what are you doing? What are you
that's a
what
good book.
are you
That's a good book.
doing? I was like, how you gonna do that? He's
That's
like, hey man. But and that's interesting with your characters. And I talked about this with the author yesterday that writes novels too. And we talked about how we may have one idea going into writing the book of how we think the book is going to lay out. But as you start to write the character, and characters tend to take on their own personalities and everything, and you just is that the way that it was for you with your characters that you had that you kind of
especially in the first book.
mhm,
I had an idea of how it was going to go, and then when I got to these characters, they sort of took on a life of their own,
mhm.
and it redirected the story a little bit.
Okay.
It changed. It didn't necessarily change the overall story,
Mhm,
but it changed the focus of the story
mhm,
because you found out, oh wait, this person here really is. He's got a whole story to tell on his own,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I gotta flesh some of that out. So that happened, especially in the first book, when I knew less than I know now, even about writing. I just
Mhm,
started writing with the first one. The last two had a little more structure going in.
mhm,
But I know
mhm,
a lot of authors work off of an outline, and
mhm,
I don't. I just sort of I know the story, I know where I'm going,
mhm.
and I start writing, and it's almost as if the story is going to take me where it wants to go.
So, absolutely.
Uh,
And I think as writers, I think we if we allow that to happen, I think we will find that the stories become, I think, say better, but that because we allow the story to, like you said, take us where it's supposed to go, not where we're trying to force it to go and everything like that.
yeah, and so that and that happens with me through the dialogue because
Mhm,
I'm always trying to figure out, well, how okay, you know what you want this person to convey.
mhm,
How would this person say it? Okay, well, who is this person? I
mhm,
mean, is he well educated? Is he a guy from the streets? Is he a criminal? I mean, what's his perspective? How would he say this and yet
mhm.
still get the point across to everyone who's reading the book? And so that can take the story in a different direction because this guy says some stuff, and it's almost as if he's saying it. You're not making it up. And say,
Right.
"Oh, that was good. Wait a minute, I got to follow this guy down the road here a little bit." So
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what would be your advice? What advice would you give to an aspiring writer? Someone that said, Mr. Porter, Mr. Lance, I have a book that I want to write. I need what would be my first step? Can you kind of give some advice to an aspiring writer?
Uh, I would say start reading a lot. Read a lot of different types of literature.
Mm, mm,
Novels.
mm,
Read nonfiction. Read genres that you might not even be interested in.
mm,
The reason is that first of all, you pick up different styles,
yeah.
and at this point, when they say someone has a new style, it's really probably uh, a combination of other styles that they've seen that they put together. So
Mm,
that's the first thing. The second thing is you learn a lot from reading.
yeah.
You just learn about things that may not be primary to your story, but they might be tangential, and you put them in, and it colors the story. It fills it in, fills in the background when you have all these details. I mean, that's one of the things about this book that makes it so real is because I was an air traffic controller, can fill in all the background on this stuff, even as the story is going along. Uh, I can fill in background with details what it's like to be in that environment. So
Mm,
read a lot, and then start writing. I mean, just write short stories, long stories. Think up a story and write about it, and then get some people to read it and see, what they think. And don't get your feelings hurt
mm.
because somebody's not going to like it. I can tell you that right now.
You are so true
Somebody
about
is
that.
not going to like it for whatever reason, and it's like
Mhm,
music. It's like music. We can all agree that, for instance, the Temptations are a wonderful group,
mhm.
but I guarantee you, your favorite Temptation song is not mine.
Right,
you
right,
know and
right.
and then there are people who say, oh, I don't like the Temptations, but I like Smokey Robinson, I like Nora
Mhm,
Jones, I like the Beatles. So it's really a very personal thing, and if you're fortunate enough so that a lot of people like you, that's great, but don't get your feelings hurt when somebody doesn't like you. J.K. Rowling was turned down 2 dozen times
mhm,
before she was published.
mhm,
Meantime, Harry Potter is an institution. So
mhm.
you can't let yourself get discouraged.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you definitely have to have thick skin.
yeah, write and keep writing. That's the best thing to do.
I like that. I like that. So what's next for you? What do you have? I know you said you got some books in the cooker, but what's next for you right now?
Well, so I have the 3 books that I've written. The
Mhm.
screenplay for Veiled Vigilance is done, and it's in the hands of some people who are associated with movies, whether they're producers or screenplay writers or whatever. So they're in their hands. I think that the pandemic has really slowed that process down.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm in the process of writing the screenplay. I'm almost finished with the screenplay for the latest book, the Senescence Project, which
Okay.
actually had a different name. It was called The Gray Apocalypse. But,
Mm,
but when you write a book and you're going to come up with a title, you got to do your research to make sure that title doesn't exist already.
yeah, yeah.
I found out that it did, so I had to change the name.
Oh,
So
okay,
the
okay,
Senescence Project sounds like, what is that? But it has to do, senescence has to do with the aging process.
okay, okay.
And I can't go any further than that but as I said, it has to do with the aging process and tainted flu vaccine serum, and it's I like it. uh, but but so that's what I'm doing now. I am working on the screenplay for that one, and then I guess I'll publish the 3rd book and start on the screenplay for that. And one of the reasons for that is, if someone wants to make a movie out of your work, someone has to write the screenplay,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
pay that person to write the screenplay.
Yes.
And I want all the money. I want it all.
Nothing wrong with that.
So so that's what I'm doing right now, and just waiting to see. I mean, as I said, I'm not a kid, but I'm hopeful that sometime in the near future, somebody will pick up on one of these and say, "Hey, let's really do something with this."
Absolutely. Now, how can people connect with you to be able to purchase the books, or like you said, if they're looking to be able to have that movie, have that book turned into a movie, they think that I mean this book, the book
Right.
or one of the books will have. How can they connect with you or contact?
Well, okay. Well, as I said, the name is DL Lance. In fact, I have one of my cards here. Can you guys see that?
Ah,
Let me get it up there.
uh-huh.
That's for the book. And then the flip side has my information on it. Let me get that up there. You can let me pull back a little bit. There you go. So it has all of the information on there, how you can contact me. The easiest way would be to call me, but you
Okay.
can contact me via email or actually, I don't know if my web page is up at this point.
Mhm.
It was at some point. I need to see that that's done again. But yeah, as I said, you can purchase the book on Amazon. It's inexpensive as a, Kindle book. Uh,
Mhm.
and if you want to make a movie, I'm really pumped for that. I'd really love to make a movie. In my mind, this book makes a great movie. Uh,
Mhm.
in fact, I think all of them do. As I said, I wrote them with an eye towards the movies.
To be able to do that.
Um, and so normally what happens is a writer writes a book, and then if it's a success, Hollywood says, "Oh, I want to make a movie out of it." That was the process before, but now the process is sort of flipping a bit. You have to have a good story, and if you have a good story, hopefully someone picks it up as a movie, and if the movie's successful, that would drive book sales. So it's flipped a bit because, as I said, as human beings, we just don't read a lot anymore. We want to be visually bombarded, and so that's the movies, which I love. But that's the way it goes now, and so hopefully I'll be happy to use the old process where the book, fosters the movie. But if it works the other way around, I'm good with that too.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, I do want to ask you this, and you mentioned it about the shifting of book writing and everything like that. Can you talk just a little bit about how you approach navigating 2020 as an author with the pandemic going on? Because we weren't doing, we couldn't do the regular in-store book signings and everything like that. We kind of had to make this shift. How were you able to adjust to what needed to be done in 2020 and moving into 2021?
Okay. Well, I think that there are a lot of steps to writing a book.
Mhm.
And so if you're in the creative mode where you're just writing it, you're coming up with a bunch of drafts and editing it and all that stuff, then 2020 was great for that
Mhm.
because,
Mhm.
you're in the house and, this, you got plenty of time to write.
Right.
But if you're beyond that, if you're in the promotion phase, then becomes very difficult. Uh,
Mhm.
and you just have to be patient, I think. I mean, obviously, if you're someone who's known, you have a much better opportunity to get something done. But that's true whether it's 2020 or not.
Right.
But as I said, I have my book in the hands of two people who are movie people, and I'm sure that nothing's been done because of the pandemic. Not that I know that they were going to do something, but they haven't even been in a position to get back to me and say
Right.
yay or nay. So I think that all of that has sort of come to a standstill. I mean, I know they're still making some movies. I'm not even sure how they're doing it. You mentioned One Night in Miami, for instance, and this Godfather Coda that they've made, which is about the death of Michael Corleone. Uh,
Okay.
they've made them. I'm not sure how they did it, uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
but certainly all of that stuff has slowed almost to a halt. And so I think you need to continue to write. And when it opens back up again, here's the good news. Uh, there's so many different platforms now
Hmm.
that all of these places need content. So if you have viable content, there's a good chance that somebody will want to use it.
Right.
It used to be it was a book or a movie and that was that. But now you got all of the streaming stuff. I can't even name them: Netflix and HBO,
Right,
all these different sources that Apple has their own stuff going on,
right,
and they all need content. They all
right.
need stories. If they're going to do movies, they need stories. And if you got a good story, you probably have a pretty good chance of getting it picked up. And that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the goal of just about everyone. If you're writing fiction,
Right.
uh, but even nonfiction, I mean, you'd like somebody to see it. You'd like to get it out there to people. So like I said, they need content, so that's good.
Yeah,
So
and
keep
you
working
just
on
you made an excellent point, and that's the thing. One of the things that I think that constantly levels the playing field is your book doesn't necessarily have to make it to the big screen. It can be on, like you said, a Netflix, an Apple, Prime, because that was
it.
Prime Video was what One Night in Miami was produced. The other one that I love, The Banker, with Samuel L. Jackson,
Yeah, right. Mhm.
done through Apple. So you don't have to have it in on the necessarily on that big screen or a big studio in order for that content to be able to get out there. Because, like you said, these other streamers need content,
Yes, they
so
did.
they're looking for that great story or those great stories that they're able to be able to tell through their networks to be able to get people to be able to grow their particular streaming networks and everything too.
Right.
So
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's great.
Yep. Yep.
I think that is awesome. So I'm gonna have you give your, I guess, how people can connect with you one more time, and then I'll give you the last word for uh, excuse me, for being able to close this out, and what you want people to know about you, about your books, and about your message that you have.
Sure. Thanks. I appreciate that. So it's D.L. Lance. That's easier to remember, I think, than the titles of the books. But there are two of them. There's Veiled Vigilance, which is this one right here, as you can see. Maybe I actually have a copy of it sitting here with me, um, and that's available on Amazon. As is the other book, The Senescence Project. Uh, I think they're great reading. They're novels. They're pretty easy to read. I think they're pretty exciting. If you like sort of conspiracy stuff and with a little twist at the end that can make you say, "Oh wow, I didn't see that coming." I think that you'll enjoy these. Um, I enjoyed writing them. I enjoyed writing them even more than I thought I would. I had done some writing in college and I hated it because I agonized over every word. But I was writing for the newspaper, so I had to
Oh,
write.
okay.
And novels, you just make stuff up, and I'm real good at that. So I think you'll enjoy them. Uh, Go out and get a copy. I would appreciate it. I'd be excited. They're inexpensive. I think they're $7.99 on Amazon. I haven't checked recently, but I think that's what they are.
Okay.
And it's a small investment for a few hours of entertainment, especially during this pandemic. It's a great opportunity to get out there and read some stuff that's out there. There's some really good stuff out there that not very well publicized. So go get them. Enjoy yourself. Once again, DL Lance. There's my information on the back. I know this is going to be recorded on YouTube, so let me put it over here away from the light so you guys can see it extra good. There you go.
Get it up.
There it is. So you can call me at that number on the bottom if you like. I'll always answer the phone. Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate this, guys.
And I appreciate you being a part of the author showcase. We appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about you, telling us a little bit about your stories that you have to tell. And as you said before, this is what the author showcase is about. It's about giving authors such as yourself that have phenomenal stories to tell, giving them a venue, a platform to be able to showcase it. And you all can pick up the current issue of the National Black Unity News. You can actually go to www.tnbun.com. You can subscribe. That's what we want you to do. Subscribe to the newspaper so that you can get the newspaper quarterly. This is a quarterly newspaper. You can actually check out our Facebook page as well. On Facebook page, the Black Community, the Black News. You can check us out on YouTube with great authors such as Mr. Lance, and you'll be able to know the YouTube channel because it has our emblem that's there as well. You can actually check out other authors that have been a part of the showcase. And I'll let you know, Mr. Lance, and myself and Mr. Murphy were talking last night. This is the 1 year anniversary of the author showcase. We actually
Really?
started
Wow.
1 year ago, 1 year ago in January of 2020. So yourself and the two other authors that we've had on so far in the showcase this year are all a part of the 1 year celebration and anniversary. So thank you very much. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Go pick up the books. I'm not going to say book, I'm going to say books because we want you to get more than one and read because we do need to read more. We
We do need to
absolutely
read.
need
Yes,
to
we
read.
do. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah,
very
that
much, Leo. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, guys. Thanks very
so
much for taking the
thank
time to
you.
watch.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And we will see you all next time on the Author Showcase. It's your boy, Leroy McKenzie Jr. And as I always say, for 2021, leave the familiar and elevate your influence. We're about 2020 elevating your influence. And what better way to do that than to have an author to tell you, to give you those books to be able to read, to be able to help you elevate your vocabulary, elevate your conversation, and elevate your mind. So we
Yep.
thank you all absolutely, and we'll talk to y'all soon.